Hello and welcome to the soft certificate and document printing feature video. We've reimagined how soft certificates and the supporting paperwork for them should be produced within MyID, and this video hopes to cover those changes. We're going to look at how the certificates are first requested and collected. We're then going to look at the printing of immediate supporting documentation. This may be documentation including the mailing address of the recipient for those certificates. Next, we'll look at the printing of a PIN mailer where that's appropriate. And finally, we'll look at how we can reprint these documents and the controls around that, and also around batch printing. Software certificates can be requested directly via operator clients, and they can also be collected via operator clients. When you configure the credential profile, you can specify how each certificate will be persisted. The three options we have are to save it to the user's certificate store, to allow the user to provide a folder where all the certificates will be saved to, or to automatically save the certificates to the first empty attached drive that it finds. This is useful for when you're physically posting certificates on a pen drive to users. The file names for the certificates will be automatically generated, and we've got a template control for what the file names will actually be. And all of this does require MyID client services to be running on the client machine. The supporting documentation is HTML based and it's template based. It uses the same technique we use for our terms and conditions documentation. You specify which template is to be used within the credential profile, and during the issuance of a device, there are two types of document that can be assigned. The transport document, which is printed during issuance, and then the PIN mailer, which is printed after issuance. The template allows for substitution of user data in there, and we use that using the exact same process as terms and conditions. To substitute user fields in, you would do target.fieldname surrounded by $% signs. To put the random PIN in, you would use user PIN surrounded by $% signs. And we have a few other options available as well. Full details of this are covered in our product documentation. The transport document is produced once the certificates have successfully issued. The intention behind this document is its paperwork to accompany the certificates and may include details on how the certificates are to be used and possibly even the address to post the certificates to. This document can be printed multiple times and it can also be batch reprinted as appropriate. The PIN mailer document is slightly more secure than that. There is a request for it generated after the successful issuance of the soft certificates. There is a report available which lists all of the pending PIN mailer print jobs, and each print job can only be actioned once. This is to avoid having multiple copies of the PIN for the PFX files floating around. There's an administrator option called Reprint PIN Mailer, which allows the PIN mailer to be reprinted ignoring the above restrictions. This is for when accidents happen, the printer jams, or the paperwork gets lost. However, this is a privileged feature and should not be made available to everyone. And like the transport document, this document can be batch printed. So MyID client services is our preferred way of printing. When this is running, we will direct the print jobs via this, and this will allow us to hide the print confirmation dialog, and it will allow us to inform the user interface when each print job has finished, in turn allowing for better feedback to the user. When MyID client service is not running, when we print a document, we will open a new browser window, construct the documents in that browser window, and then let the native printing for that document take place. It's worth noting that batch printing will only work via the MyID client services route and will error if that service is not running. There are other items outside of the scope of this video to consider, and that's all available in our product documentation. I'd like to highlight how to upload these document templates to the server and our server generated PIN recommendations. So now let's see this in action. What we'll do is we will create a credential profile for a user with soft certificates on. We'll request that. collect those soft certificates, print the transport document for it, print the pin mailer document for it, and then we'll have an explore of the batch reprinting of that pin mailer if we assume something went wrong or the wrong paper stock was used. In fact, we'll actually create two credential profiles. We'll do one where the pin is entered by the user and one where the pin is generated by the server. Okay, so let's see this in action. First, we'll have a look at two credential profiles that I've created. We'll log into MyID desktop. And in here, I've created a credential profile called soft cert. This is one where I expect the user to enter their PIN or their PFX password during the issuance of the credentials. So if we look at PIN settings, we will see there is a user specified PIN, and it's going to enforce these PIN restrictions. If we look at the issuance mail documents, you will see there is no PIN mailing document set, but there is a transport document set, and this transport document is transport document user PIN. Now, if we have a look at the other credential profile I've created, soft cert auto, here we can see I've specified a server generated PIN using the Edifice PIN generator. The key for the PIN generator I created using the key manager workflow, and it's allocated here. Under mailing documents, you'll see I have a different transport document, and I actually have a PIN mailer document specified as well. If we look at the certificates on this one, you'll see the storage method is defined per certificate policy. These are the three we discussed earlier: saving to the file system, saving to the user local store, and saving to the first available empty drive. We'll leave it as the file system for this demonstration because it's a little more visible. So now we've moved over to Operator Client. I'm running this within the Edge browser, but it works within most modern browsers. For convenience, I'm just going to full screen it. And what we'll do now is issue a credential that requires the collector to enter the password for the PFX file. So we'll find a recipient. We'll take MacBat. We look at their account. It's worth paying attention to the address here. We'll see that come up later, Park Road, Sunnydale Heights. And we'll click Request Device. And here we'll pick the soft cert credential profile. And now we see the request for that credential profile when it was made, and the operator I'm logged in with has permissions to collect it. So here you'll see details about the certificates are about to be collected. We can enter the password that we want for the PFX file and click download. This is going to make the request against the server. The server is going to issue the certificates. When they're done, send them back to the client. The client's going to ask us where we'd like to save them. And we'll save them to C certificates. We'll make a folder in there called Mac. And we'll select that. So now we've saved them. Notice it didn't prompt us for file names. That's automatically generated. In fact, if we have a look in that folder, you can see it's called it MacBat email encryption. And if we open that up, we can see that the password we entered is the correct password for the PFX file. So we've issued the credential. Now we need to print the documentation that goes with it. So we'll click Print. On my system, I have OneNote specified as my default printer. And you'll see it's created new printout documents. So that's the end of the standard issuance. You'll notice that when we return to view the request, we no longer have the collect option, but we do have the print transport document option. This allows us to print that document a second time. This is for in case the printout got lost or the printer jammed. And if we click that and click print, again, this is going to route through OneNote. And we can see a second document has been generated identical to the first. So that's how we handle issuance where the collector is in charge of the password for the PFX file. Let's have a look at how we handle issuance where MyID controls that password. So we'll go back to MacBat and we'll request them another device. This time we'll use the soft cert auto profile. We can collect it using the same collect link as before. But this time you'll notice there are no password fields here. That's because the password is being handled by the server. If we select download, again, it's being issued by the server. When it's done, sends it back to the client and will prompt for where we're going to save the certificates. We'll make a folder called Mac2. And we'll have it saved them there. And now when we print the transport document, because there was a different template configured, we should see different content in the generated documents. So here a third document has now appeared, and you'll see this contains details saying how the password will be sent later, stuff like that. You'll notice the address is still correct for the user. Correct. So when we've finished that, we have an extra option available on the request now of print pin mailer document. If we select that and hit print, again, this is routing through OneNote. So we can see a fourth document has now been generated. This is using the print pin mailer template, and it has the password for that PFX file clearly within it. When we close that and return to viewing the request, you'll notice that print pin mailer has now gone. That's because the basic workflow only allows it to be actioned once. But because I'm running as a privileged user, I have access to the reprint pin mailer workflow. And that's this button here. That will let me reprint the document regardless of the state. It's a privileged operation. We would recommend holding that back for the more senior operators. If I click print, you'll see another document's appeared in OneNote with the password, and the password's identical and the document's identical to the previously generated one. So that's how you'd handle MyID managing the passwords. So let's have a look now at the batch capabilities. In the requests, we have the ability to look for all the print jobs that still require a pin mailer to be printed. And if we select 5 from here, we can do print pin mailer. It's going to ask us to confirm that we want to print all 5. We're going to say yes. And now it's going to go off and print each one in a loop. And as each one successfully prints, we'll see a tick appear in this list. And if I load up OneNote, we should see new documents going in for different users with different passwords. There's one more to go. If any of those failed to print, say the printer reported a jam or out of paper, this would become a cross. And when I hit close, that the failed items would appear selected in this list. As it is, because everything completed successfully, the items have been removed from the list. So that completes the demonstration. If you'd like to know any more about this feature or what it's capable of, please do get in touch. Thank you very much.